Can we even call stealth a genre at this point? How should one refer to a subset of the industry who, despite being wedged into every AAA release of the past 1.5 decade, is lucky to release a dedicated entry once upon an eon, apart from Star Wars?
Who?
Prevailing wisdom among corporate cockbags and industry analysts alike asserts that stealth, despite its mechanical ubiquity, has the commercial appeal of a Lizzo swimsuit calendar. But for my Monopoly money, there's two evident issues with that formulation. First and fucking foremost, you could fit all the game journalists' prevailing wisdom on the head of a dust mite's dick and still have room to spare. And second, Red Dead Redemption 2 had longer, more elaborate sneakifying sequences than some stealth games. And 45 million units sold later, it's safe to say that shit sold like camo cargo shorts at a death metal concert. For perspective, that's 40 million more units than the 2018 Game of the Year, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which a new Tenchu title was canceled to create. Enter spiders, cyanide, and asobo. No, it's not a new menu item at Chipotle. It's the best kept secret in contemporary gaming, because folks, for once, the Frenchies are bailing our asses out. France, where the women are hairy, the men are smooth, the cheese is soft, and the comic books go hard. Yet in a gaming industry dying in double time, it's largely thanks to middle market mavens from Frankatopia that future generations of scientists will likely devote decades to uncovering the inverse relationship between bathing and badass fucking video games. And so it was that in amongst the unwarranted accolades and Game Award wankathons, A Plague Tale: Innocence skulked its stealthy way into a 2019 gaming lineup that was shittier than our president's pants during a visit to the Vatican. A historical fantasy fusion of story, stealth, and puzzles set in medieval France at the heart of the 100 Years' War, whose primary gimmick was a profusion of fucking rats who must be held perpetually at bay by torchlight or sunlight in maps that begin as slightly dim and get darker than Bernie Sanders' lit porn. Don't look it up. It was simple, unambitious, courting immediate but favorable comparisons to The Last of Us, which even then was a leaning tower of undeserved praise. Most impressively of all, despite boasting the unbridled budget of an Ed Wood film, its production values not only met, but arguably surpassed Sony's post-apocalyptic pegging simulator, spinning the sad tale of a young boy gradually awakening to unearthly powers related in some way to the onset of the African-American plague. The player, meanwhile, inhabits the role of Amicia, a refreshingly feminine protagonist as like to put flowers in her hair as to lob a pebble at a bad guy's brainstem. I mention this not for the purposes of exposition, but because A Plague Tale: Requiem improves upon all of the above. With an arresting, atmospheric story spun around a strong emotional center, the player is propelled not by curiosity over the next thrill or scripted sequence, but by the relationships between the characters and the outcome of a journey that is quite evidently goddamn doomed. By the time the closing chapters unfurl, pestilence engulfs the land in a fume so suffocatingly noxious France almost became France, you'll comprehend the genuine weight of the act when you're finally forced to do a thing that has to be Fuck you, I'm not crying, you're crying. And one of the reasons you empathize with Amicia so profoundly is because at every turn she seemingly subverts the steely, man-jawed archetype of the corporate-mandated strong whammon protagonist. In an ocean of broads burning bras between bow combat, here's a female character who simply wants to live a normal life, only to be inexplicably thrust into a merciless, fatal struggle for survival against physically superior, well-trained male adversaries who invariably murder the merry fuck out of you with a single swipe. Contrary to contemporary narrative mandates where boobs deflect bullets mid-flight, here is a woman who during at least two separate points in the story is so overwhelmed to the point of uselessness, she collapses in a hyperventilative panic attack, necessitating a male companion half her age accomplish her objectives in her stead. She engages in a single sword fight the entire game, and it ends with her enemy winning, her arm dislocated, body slashed to every solitary shade of shit, and to add insult to idiocy, her ponytail being sliced off so fast you would have thought it suffered from gender dysphoria. And folks, this is how it should be. Not merely because it courts our sympathy, and not even because she's got a pair of jiggling titties, but because she is a stealth game protagonist. Like a confidential source at Rolling Stone, she's powerful when concealed and all but ineffectual once exposed. And I'm elated to report that since the inaugural offering, said stealth has deepened considerably. Whereas in Innocence, story was center stage with gameplay comprised of a procession succession of puzzles where the penalty for an incorrect answer was a rodentine horde boring their way through your balls, Requiem, by embracing its stealth inspirations, envisions more imaginative, open-ended scenarios where multiple routes, approaches, and executions yield welcomely variegated results. The ability to kill, conk out, or outright avoid enemies represents a refreshing reversion to sneakers of yore, even if the narrative around it is more linear than Adam Sessler's Coke straw. It even occasionally unfurls into full-sail sandbox sequences, which with a game this goddamn beautiful is almost as much for David Attenborough nature photography in fucking photo mode as it is for actual exploration. I don't know what it is about these games that turns me into that pretentious kid from art class taking black and white photos of fucking mailboxes and shit and thinking he's Andy Warhol, and I ain't complaining either. But the blinding brilliance of Requiem is in its counterintuitive approach to stealth. Whereas the original seems separated into line-of-sight sneaking sections against ever more overwhelming human adversaries bracketed by light puzzles with enough rats to almost open a Burger King, Requiem shrewdly fuses the fucking two, forcing our Frenchy protagonist to circumnavigate a delicate tightrope betwixt blending into shadows deep enough to disappear into, while illuminating enough of the area to preclude convening a rat colony in your colon. But it ain't perfect. For one, all of the above only applies if you convince Chatty Cathy and the Soy Wonder to shut the pan-fried fuck up long enough to even allow the tension of intrusion to take hold. Perk an ear, Pepe. All the imaginative maps, mood lighting, and enough fog for 15 fucking Silent Hill games is about as youthful as Macron's wife's uterus if the protagonists are too busy whispering Shakespeare sonnets to even allow it to register. And thanks for pointing out the pile of burning bodies to my immediate right happens to be on fire, you walking fucking Windows paperclip. Any other utilitarian chestnuts you want to lay on me as I wade through a moldering blood, bones, and poo pit precisely 2% stinkier than you are? Ho ho ho, running is noisy.
To look around, look around.
Damn, I'll have to keep that in mind if we ever swing by the Maginot Line. And here I was still wrapping my brain around the idea that water is wet. Why don't you take a shower and fucking confirm it? Although if she did, it'd probably be in the blood of her enemies. Don't get me wrong, Amicia is still eminently vulnerable, and the bitch is easier to kill than a Netflix sitcom, which is why it's infuriating that the designers occasionally corral the player into unentertaining asides, where waves of sword-wielding strongmen advance at the speed of colon cancer to collect crossbow bolts pointy-side fucking first. Mind you, it's mitigated by an ammo limit that's lower than Warwick Davis's dick, but it's counterintuitive at a minimum for a stealth game, and as it culminates in a chase sequence where she literally wields a medieval fucking Flammenwerfer, annoyance rapidly transmogrifies into barking batshit. But bloodthirst is the least of this bitch's problems, as she evidently picked up a wicked case of TB between games, such that every time an enemy occupies an adjoining zip code, she starts huffing and puffing like Hillary on a Stairmaster. To be fair, it's one of those modern gaming tropes intended to cultivate immersion, meaning it inevitably achieves the exact opposite. I assume the same thought process went into deciding we need an audio cue to remember to sneak, as when Call of Duty decided we need a screen slathered in strawberry jam to know we're wounded after blocking a shotgun blast with our fucking face. Meaning, yes, apparently the last thing Kurt Cobain saw in life was a screen full of Smuckers. But even if he did, he just returned back to the checkpoint.
No! No!
Yes, friends, because apparently the year is 2002, and thus we're back to everyone's favorite fucking checkpoint stealth. How to put this? Checkpoints are Satan's bookmarks. Can you fucking conceive of a situation where every time you stopped reading a 1,000-page novel, the book took it upon itself to return you to the beginning of the chapter and doesn't end with you opening fucking fire? And it wouldn't be an issue if some sequences didn't have more padding than Elliot Page's boxer briefs. You know you got an issue when you could reduce the runtime of at least 2 entire chapters simply by telling 2 characters to park their fucking boats a little closer. Gilligan got off the goddamn island in half the time it took me to get to one. But when it all comes together, what emerges is an achingly poignant narrative disseminated through intense stealth, tastefully employed combat, and a surprisingly earnest emphasis on a long orphan concept called player choice. It ain't perfect, but when those planets align, you can almost forgive Amicia for spending 80 or so hours getting her cunt kicked in. Not that I don't sympathize with a woman learning for the first time in her life to stand up and fight, even when it ends in her being beaten to a fine paste. I once took a French self-defense course. Never run so hard in my fucking life. I'm Razor Fist! God fucking speed!
the French.